Welcome to the Australian Business Executive Podcast, where we speak with Australia's most influential industry professionals on the business and economic development issues taking place across the country. You can stay up to date with all our content, including our magazines, podcasts and videos by visiting www.theabe.com.au and clicking on subscribe.
All right, today's guest is Real Estate Institute of Victoria, commonly known as REIV CEO Gil King. Gil, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So for listeners who might not be familiar, can you just give us an overview of who REIV is and the work that you guys do?
So yes, Jesse, we're a member-based organisation that supports real estate agents and obviously property professionals in a broad range of occupations like owners, corporation managers, valuers, auctioneers, property managers, probably a bit more than just the real estate, what is commonly thought of a real estate agent, but across a whole broad range of people who require licensing and regulation to perform duties under the Estate Agents Act and other relative legislation.
We had the chance to have you contribute some content for the Australian Business Executive many years ago as part of the HIA. So do you want to just give us a bit of a rundown of how you moved from HIA, a crossover into REIV?
Yeah, sure. So I was with the government regulator in the building industry for about 12 years and went to HIA and really was on the other side of the property sector. So really from being the regulator to being regulated, and again, another member-based organisation of the Housing Industry Association. And after about 8 years there, I got approached to consider the role at the Real Estate Institute of Victoria, probably because of my advocacy work at HIA, but also obviously to see some change brought to the REIV. And I was successful in getting that gig about just on 5 years ago.
And do you want to give us just a bit of an overview of some of the things that you were involved in during your time? Because I know that you're leaving the organization shortly, so it'd be interesting to hear about, a little bit about the achievements and advocacy within the organization.
Sure. So if I talk a bit about the organisation first, it was in need of repair, if I put it that way. There was some issues around it, running at a substantial loss for a couple of years, and we've been able to turn that around to quite a reasonable profit in the last couple of years, the biggest one being this year. It's been very difficult, obviously, with COVID-19, but we were able to, for the last 2 years, have a combined profit for the last 2 years. So that was important. There were some systemic issues that need to be addressed within the organisation, and I came in with a view, probably my role was always for about a 5-year term, to make that change and to get the organisation on an even footing, so that the next CEO could come in with some clear space and just work on the on what needs to be done and probably take all the credit for that improvement. And I'm comfortable with that. In terms of advocacy, my very first meeting with government when I arrived just under 5 years ago was in relation to the Residential Tenancies Act. And that was reform that came into Victoria 29th of March this year in 2021. And that saw about 138 changes to the legislation. So that was quite an involved process. So really for the whole probably 4 years, there's been the process of getting that legislation introduced.
And do you want to tell us a little bit more about current industry issues that the Real Estate Institute of Victoria is facing at the moment?
Yeah, so it's obviously COVID-19 was significant. With on a couple of occasions, the industry was shut down completely, not able to operate, and we did a fair bit of work to get the government to understand that the work that we did was quite COVID safe. It was, in terms of contact tracing, real estate agents have been contact tracing for decades, not just during COVID-19, because it's all about growing their contact base. So every time someone goes in to do an inspection, you hand your name and your mobile number over, or your email address. So that was something which was pretty much front of mind of agents right from the beginning. We've also introduced some like hybrid sort of activities, like a mix between in-person and virtual auctions, virtual inspections. So a lot of changes in that regard. So COVID was really challenging, plus the ever-changing restrictions, and the difference between metropolitan Melbourne and regional Victoria was extremely difficult because there were different rules for sometimes not just for metro regional, but also for different postcodes and different local government areas. So it really was quite challenging, and they would typically come out on a Thursday night at midnight, which is probably the worst time possible for real estate because everything's in the paper ready to go, and property up for inspection and sale on the weekend, just a couple of days away. So those restrictions were very difficult and to interpret them, and it's very hard for government to write directions that covers every aspect of business in Victoria. We understand that, but it did lead to a lot of confusion.
And with you exiting as CEO for the association, how do you prepare someone to come into your role?
Well, fortunately, the person who'll be replacing me has my current role in the Northern Territory. So he's familiar with real estate, there'll be a gap between the two of us. But I've known this person for the whole of my 5 years at REIV, so he'll be he's very familiar with some of the issues that we're faced, and I'll be ensuring that there's a smooth transition once he commences. I'll stay in touch.
And Gil, before we finish today, is there anything else that you might like to add or have not had a chance to address?
No, I suppose, Jesse, the other thing I'll say is that it's been an honour to finish up in this role. Thinking from the young fellow way back in the early days at Noble Park in Victoria and end up being the CEO of REIV is a great honour, and I've really enjoyed it. And I thank everyone for the experience.
Excellent. Well, Gil, thanks very much for your time.
No problems. Thanks, Jesse.
This has been a production of the Australian Business Executive, a division of Romulus Rising Proprietary Limited. All rights reserved. You can stay up to date with the Australian Business Executive, including our magazines, podcasts and videos, by visiting www.theabe.com.au and clicking on subscribe.